Sometimes good airplanes can earn bad reputations. For example, in the airline world, the DC-10 had some early design flaws which eventually led to some high-profile accidents. And even after improving the design and increasing its safety, it still lost the public trust. And I'm sure you've heard of the Boeing 737 MAX, which in my opinion is a good airplane, but it just needed a software update and also better training for the pilots. But what about general aviation? You know, the small private airplanes. Well, these can have bad reputations as well. So today we're going to be taking a look at 5 good airplanes that have bad reputations. Let's get into it. What happens when you survey 10,000 flight instructors on what would make the perfect trainer? Well, you get the Piper PA-38 Tomahawk. Piper set out to build an airplane which would have all the characteristics of a good trainer. You know, great visibility, 2 doors, simple fuel system, heavier controls, and also a plane that could be used for spin training. The Tomahawk accomplished all of this, but it was its spin characteristics that led to controversy. The Tomahawk will enter a fully developed spin, and it actually requires proper spin training to exit, and on the other hand, a Cessna 150 will exit a spin pretty much on its own. Once in a spin, the Tomahawk needs full opposite rudder, neutral ailerons, and some down elevator to exit, and after inputting those controls, the plane will momentarily spin faster before exiting in a fully nose down angle. Now, this exit can easily lead to overspeeding the airplane and then pulling an excessive amount of G's in the recovery. Its spin characteristics, while flying mostly in the training market, led to a high accident rate. Thus, the plane was given the nicknames Traumahawk and Terror Hawk. But despite this, it's actually a great little airplane that just needs proper training to fly safely. It'll cruise at 115 miles per hour, has a range of 500 miles, and it burns only around 6 gallons per hour. The Tomahawk was produced between 1978 and 1982, and about 2,400 were built. This next airplane comes from the legendary designer Jim Beatty. The AA-1 Yankee stems from the BD-1, which was originally designed to be a kit-built airplane. The design was then certified to be a factory-built personal traveler and was produced by American Aviation and eventually Grumman and then Gulfstream. With its side-by-side seating, tricycle landing gear, and sliding canopy, the Yankee drew the attention of many flight schools. However, this would be an issue because the plane wasn't engineered to be a trainer. It had touchy controls, low useful load, and intense stall characteristics. And the FAA originally certified the Yankee for spins, but many reported that after a third turn, it would be very difficult to exit. So 5 years after production started, the FAA actually rolled back its spin certification and required a spins prohibited placard in the cockpit. The Yankee ended up having a poor safety record in its early years, with many accidents due to spin training, fuel starvation, and also hitting obstacles on takeoff. The Yankee went through some design modifications which increased its safety and performance, and it actually started to become a pretty successful airplane. And pilots who flew the Yankee enjoyed its sporty controls, 110-knot cruise, cabin comfort, and sliding canopy. Around 1,800 were produced between 1968 through 1978, and many can be found for sale today at very modest prices. The next plane on the list has a few reputations, one of which is how loud it is. The Mitsubishi MU-2 was designed in Japan to be both a military and civilian airplane. The MU-2 comes in a short and extended fuselage, and it's one of the fastest turboprop twins, cruising in at 370 miles per hour. When it first came to the market, the MU-2 was modestly priced, which drew the attention of many pilots. And with its small size and light airframe, pilots could legally fly the MU-2 with a standard twin-engine rating and an instructor sign-off. But its handling is closer to that of a small jet, and many pilots found themselves ill-equipped to fly the airplane. In the US, the accident rate started to rise, and FAA investigations were conducted into the safety of the airplane. Many started referring to the plane as the Mitsubishi Widowmaker. However, the conclusion of the FAA investigation was that it was a safe airplane when operated by a properly trained pilot. The majority of the accidents in the MU-2 were due to pilot error, and eventually the FAA required a special federal air regulation to fly the airplane. This increased training led to a much better safety record, but its original reputation still stuck with many in the flying community. About 700 were built between 1963 and 1986, and with proper training and a full wallet, you can have a great performing airplane today. The next plane on the list is one that attempts to check all the boxes. For pilots and aircraft owners, the Piper Malibu was the next step up in airplane ownership, and many wanted to fly higher and faster than their previous single-engine airplane. At first, the airplane was highly regarded, but with its pressurization and air conditioning system, the Malibu saw increased engine failures. Then about 9 years after it was introduced, a pattern of in-flight breakups started to shed light, and in just 2 years, there were 7 in-flight airframe breakups. The FAA conducted a thorough investigation into the design of the airplane and its autopilot system, and yet a single cause for the breakups was never found. The FAA then prohibited flying the airplane in instrument weather conditions, which dismayed many owners because, well, they bought the plane to fly above and around weather. The FAA eventually rolled back that decision and came to a similar conclusion as with the previous airplanes on this list. It's a safe airplane when a safe pilot is at the controls. Today, the Malibu is still being produced by Piper under the model name M350, and it cruises at 213 knots and can fly at 25,000 feet. The M350 is currently the only pressurized single-engine certified airplane on the market. If you're familiar with airplane nicknames, then you probably know the moniker for the Beechcraft V-tail Bonanza. After a pattern of high-profile crashes in the Bonanza, the public named it the forked-tail Doctor Killer. Oof, that's a rough one. Back in the late 1940s, the Bonanza was one of the first civilian airplanes to have a retractable landing gear, and it was pretty fast for its time. It appealed to a market of people who had the money to afford one, oftentimes doctors or lawyers. Owners of Bonanzas didn't always have the proper training to fly one, and a similar cause of accidents started to happen. First, a non-instrument rated pilot would fly into the clouds and quickly become disoriented. They would start to descend in a deep spiral, and once they exited the clouds and saw the ground coming up, they would abruptly pull up on the elevator. This would cause so much force on that V-tail that in many cases they completely flattened it. Crazy. Later on, the FAA even required reinforcements to be added to the tail. The demographic of pilots in these crashes was often a doctor, so the name Dr. Killer just stuck. Sadly, the famous artists Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper died in a Bonanza crash in 1959, and this became known as the day the music died. Despite the Bonanza earning one of the harshest reputations in general aviation, the airplane remains one of the most successful of all time. It started production in 1947 and remains in production today as the Bonanza G36. If you go up to any group of pilots and you refer to an airplane as the Doctor Killer, they're going to know exactly which airplane you're talking about. And some might even reply and say that they think doctors are Bonanza killers. Well, I hope you all enjoyed the video. Remember to like and subscribe. And until then, blue skies, and I'll see you in the next video.